Picture this, 1962. An epidemic is sweeping through East Africa. It's shutting down schools, affecting over 1,000 people. But here's the twist. This wasn't caused by a virus, it wasn't a poison. The trigger for this whole thing was a single laugh. Let's dive into the incredibly strange case of the Tanganyika laughter epidemic. So, our story kicks off in Tanganyika, a country on the brink of a totally new chapter. It had just gained independence from Britain in 1961, so you have this incredible mix of hope, but also a ton of anxiety. And it's in this really charged environment, in a small village, that the first spark is lit. And believe it or not, this whole mass of events started with just 3 people. Yup, 3 schoolgirls. On January 30th, 1962, something happened to them that would eventually ripple out to affect more than 1,000 people and close down over a dozen schools. At a mission-run boarding school, one of those 3 girls started laughing. But we're not talking about a normal giggle here. This was completely uncontrollable. It could go on for hours, sometimes even days. And soon it spread to her friends. Then it just tore through the school like wildfire. Within weeks, 95 students were hit by it, and the staff was completely overwhelmed. Okay, so when you hear laughter epidemic, your mind probably goes somewhere fun, right? Almost comical. But the reality of what went down in Tanganyika was the total opposite. And what's really fascinating is how the story got completely twisted over the years. I mean, listen to how later retellings talked about it. They painted this picture of a delightful social phenomenon using words like merriment. It was framed like the entire region just got a charming case of the giggles. But the reality was anything but delightful. The actual reality, what researchers on the ground were seeing, was deeply distressing. This so-called laughter was just one piece of a really painful puzzle. Victims were also crying uncontrollably, fainting, getting skin rashes, and having trouble breathing. They were restless, sometimes even violent, and many felt like they were being persecuted. This was not joy. It was an agonizing ordeal. So if it's not a virus, how in the world does something like this spread from 3 girls to over 1,000 people across the region? Well, the answer is kind of ironic. It was a decision made with the best of intentions that ended up making everything so much worse. By March, things were out of control. Nearly 2/3 of the students were affected. The school officials, totally overwhelmed, decided to shut the school down and send everyone home. You'd think that would stop it, right? Nope. That's actually what spread it. The students carried this affliction back with them to their villages, and from there, it just exploded across other schools and communities, even hopping the border into Uganda. And the scale of this thing was just staggering. We're talking over 1,000 people affected. 14 schools were forced to close their doors. And this whole thing lasted for 18 months. Then, just as mysteriously as it started, it just vanished. Naturally, people at the time were freaking out, desperate for an explanation. Was the maize flour poisoned? Was it some kind of new, unknown virus? One theory even suggested the atmosphere had been poisoned by atomic bombs. I mean, people were grasping at straws. But every single medical test they ran came back empty. There was no physical cause they could find. So what was it? Well, after decades of study, we have a pretty clear diagnosis. What happened in Tanganyika is considered a textbook case of a phenomenon called mass psychogenic illness. Mass psychogenic illness, or MPI, or you might have heard the older term mass hysteria, is basically when physical symptoms with no actual physical cause spread like wildfire through a tight-knit group. You can think of it as a collective stress response that becomes physically real. But it turns out, not all cases are the same. So experts usually break it down into 2 types. First, you've got mass anxiety hysteria. This is usually kicked off by some kind of sudden scare. It spreads really fast and then it's over pretty quickly. But then there's mass motor hysteria, which involves physical movements like twitching, shaking, or uncontrollable laughing and crying. This one's triggered by long-term built-up stress, and it can spread gradually and last for a very, very long time. And that's the key right there, the Tanganyika epidemic. Lasting so long, with all those specific physical symptoms, it is a perfect fit for mass motor hysteria. So that solves the what happened. But that leads to an even more interesting question. Why? Why this group of people at this specific time? To get that, we have to look at the insane pressure cooker of stress they were all living in. Just look at this timeline. It's wild. Just a few weeks before this whole thing starts, Tanzania becomes an independent nation. That's a huge moment of pride, sure, but also a ton of uncertainty. Then, just weeks after that, racial divisions in schools are officially ended. These are massive, society-shaking changes happening at a dizzying speed. You can see how this creates a perfect storm of stress, right? You've got the national anxiety of a brand new country. Then, for these students in particular, there's this huge cultural conflict. They're caught between the traditional beliefs of their families and this totally different Western-style education. Throw in the normal pressures of being a teenager away from home, and you have a group that's incredibly vulnerable to some kind of physical release for all that pent-up psychological tension. Now, as bizarre as this all sounds, the Tanganyika epidemic isn't some one-off historical oddity. It's actually part of a long, strange pattern of human behavior that goes back for centuries. Yeah, before people started laughing uncontrollably, they were dancing uncontrollably. Between the 1300s and the 1600s, Europe experienced these waves of so-called dancing plagues, or choreomania. Take the 1518 dancing plague in Strasbourg. I'm not kidding. For weeks, hundreds of people just danced uncontrollably in the streets, many until they collapsed or even died from exhaustion. And the cause? Just like in Tanganyika, these outbreaks flared up during times of extreme societal stress, famine, disease, and upheaval. It's the exact same phenomenon, just expressing itself differently across cultures. You know, it's really easy to look back at this stuff and think, oh, that was a long time ago, people were just superstitious. But the truth is, this behavior is baked into us as humans. Mass psychogenic illness still happens today. It looks a little different now. I mean, look at 2011 in Leroy, New York. A group of high school students developed Tourette's-like tics and twitches that baffled doctors until it was identified as a case of MPI. Or even more recently, during the immense stress of the pandemic, a global phenomenon emerged where young people developed sudden tics after watching TikTok videos about tic disorders. The medium has changed from village gossip to a viral video, but the underlying mechanism is exactly the same. And this leaves us with a fascinating thought. The story of Tanganyika isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a powerful reminder of the deep connection between our minds, our bodies, and our communities. It shows how collective stress can manifest in the most unexpected ways. And in our hyper-connected world, where fear and anxiety can go viral in an instant, it makes you wonder, what form will the next outbreak of mass hysteria take?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe.